What is up, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. Today we are checking out the Jam Pedals Boomster MK.2. This is a really nice sounding buffer booster pedal. It's designed to bring out all of the subtleties and details of your full range guitar tone. There's a lot of features on this thing. It's definitely not just a boost pedal, at least in my humble opinion. So let's get right into it. First of all, you've got 16 dB of clean headroom boost. Now you can run this at either 9 or 18 volts. You get even more headroom at 18 volts. For demo purposes, I'm just going to run it at 9 volts, and it sounds great, but you can run it at 18. They employed, and I'm no tech, so I'm not super hip to this stuff, but the chips that were employed were Texas Instruments, let me look at that, yeah, OPA 2132 chips, and apparently those are really nice sounding chips. So those have been employed. I know the buffer in it, just sonically to me, sounds and feels great. The nice thing about, you know, a pedal that's got a really good buffer in it is it's going to fix essentially problems down the line. If you've got a lot of capacitance with your cables, if you're losing top end, if you're losing clarity, a really good sounding buffer fixes all that. But sometimes, you know, not all buffers are the same. So I will say in this case, this buffer does sound really good. You can run it in what's called true bypass. It actually ships stock in buffered bypass, and that's how I'm going to demo it, and that's how I left it. I think the only reason you'd want to turn this buffer off is if there's, you know, run it true bypasses, there's something down the line that you don't want seeing a buffer. But I would say for the most part, just leave it on. And like I said, I'm going to demo it in buffered bypass mode. So 16 dB, clean boost, really dynamic sounding pedal. There's a switch, a three-way switch. It's basically like a subtly voiced thing that they did that I think is really cool. So in the up position, you can attenuate some highs. In the middle position, it's flat or full range. And then in the down position, which was my favorite position, it actually adds a bit of mids. Now inside this pedal, there's two mini potentiometers that allow you to even tweak further the high end and the mids in this pedal. Now I'm leaving it stock for demo purposes, but that's always cool because then you make the pedal your own. You can either dial it to work great with a certain amp or a certain guitar, or maybe you want like a lot more mids. You could actually tweak it so it does that, and it kind of personalizes the pedal, which is awesome. Also, when I had mentioned you can choose between buffered bypass and true bypass, there's internal dip switches that you can go in and tweak to do that as well. The other cool thing about this pedal is you can choose between momentary and latch function. The cool thing about momentary is if you've got spots in a tune where you just need to stab out and then pull back with a guitar solo, or just a really punchy part that needs to stand out for maybe a bar, you can just hold the pedal down, momentary, and then let it off, and the pedal bypasses. So we'll get into that in the demo. That's really cool. Another really nice feature is if you have a 10K volume pedal that's passive, I should say 10K expression pedal, you can plug it in right here, and now what you've got is a volume control, and it's actually really cool. So you know, you can go from, like, if you're running it, and this way I'm going to demo it, if you're running it in buffered bypass and the pedal's off, you can still essentially use this as a volume pedal. So it'll go from off to unity, and it's really, really smooth. But if you turn the pedal on, then you can go from off to wherever you've set your boost. So if you want subtle amounts of gain differences, you can take advantage of that. So that's a cool feature. We will check that out as well. And I think that's it on this. Now you're going to see, and you probably saw in the demo, there's you saw the volume pedal, but there's also another pedal that I got out to take two of the higher gain solos. The first solo was just this dimed into the amp, but the other two solos was this into the Vimran, because I wanted you guys to hear how it sounds pushing into a box. Now I'm going to demo it the other way. I'm going to let you guys hear how it sounds on the other side as an overall level boost, and we'll get into all that in the demo. So yeah, let's check out this Jam Pedals Boomster MK.2. Okay, let's get started. Here's just the guitar into the amp. I've got it dialed pretty clean. Actually, if I was going to use more boost, I'd actually dial that amp to break up even more. But so we can really hear what the Boomster is doing, I'm going to leave it dialed that way. The obvious is right there. We'll get to why this is here. But yeah, let's just start with the Boomster, and we'll just kind of dial some tones, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so just goofing around, doing some noodling, turning things on and off. I obviously went from pretty much all the way down, which was, unity. I started about there, but basically just a little bit of boost all the way up to that full range of boost. You saw me changing this switch here, as I mentioned before. Up position cuts highs. Middle is essentially neutral, full range. And then the down position actually pushes mids, which I really liked the most, especially within a track. But it's nice to have that feature, especially, because even sitting at unity, what if I wanted just a little more mid? But I just, for rhythm tracks, it kind of tightened things up. Maybe for solos, I think I left it in that mid bump the whole time, but maybe a solo is a little too bright, maybe in that neutral setting. Maybe that's too toppy. So you can go up and soften that up. But even in that neutral setting, I shouldn't say neutral, but in unity, I like having that mid boost. Now this box is in stock form. As I mentioned before, there are two potentiometers in there, mini potentiometers that allow you to adjust the high and the mid, so you can kind of make it your own. But this is in stock form, and I pretty much like it the way it is. Also, speaking of stock form, it was shipped in buffered bypass, and that's how I'm going to be demoing it. I do really like the way the buffer sounds in this. So even when it's off, you're still getting the buffered circuit that basically helps if you've got capacitance issues and what have you that's darkening your tone, there's load down the line, whatever it is. This particular buffer sounds and feels really good. So that's how we're listening to it. The other thing that took me a second to figure out was when they were, I was reading that it was momentary and latch, and I was like, well, how do it know? And it's like, oh, that's right. It's probably a microprocessor in there. So, and has nothing to do with the sound. It's how the switch is programmed. But if you hold the switch down, momentary. If you just hit it, latch. Very cool. So if you've got sections of a song where you need to just step on it, hit it, and then come back off, I thought that was a really cool, kind of nicely thought out feature. Okay, so I think you guys get how this thing sounds. The buffer in it sounds great. The range is awesome. The tweakability, just having this switch sounds really good to me. And let me know in the comments what you guys think. But to me, I like that feature quite a bit. Okay, so that's cool. Let me show you why this is here. If you have an expression pedal, I believe it's a 10K expression pedal, you can plug it into the expression jack, and this becomes, especially in buffered bypass, it becomes a volume pedal in and of itself. So with it bypassed, you can go basically from all the way off to unity if you're in buffered bypass. I'm not sure that works in true bypass, but in buffered bypass it definitely does. That's a really great feature. It's super smooth. It didn't do anything weird. I just plugged it in and went, which is always a plus. Now the other thing that's cool is if you have the pedal on, you can go from 0 up to whatever you have your level dialed to. So if you want more of a gradual taper that you have control over of the pedal while you're playing, that's a really nice feature. It kind of depends on the player. I like to roll volume pedals or just play softer, but that's a really nice feature. Okay, so that's cool. That's what that does. I've got the shanks up here, this ODS 1. I actually used this for the second and third solo. I used this pedal with the jam pedal Boomster into it. And obviously what that's going to do, if you're going to run this just like we're hitting this amplifier, it will create more volume, but it's also going to create more saturation, right? So the way I was running it, if you go back and listen, the Amp does not get that saturated, but I was clobbering it with this because we have up to 16 dB, and I was hitting it pretty hard, so I was getting a lot of saturation, which sounded great. So listen to that. But the way I have it set up right now is the reverse, because there's, a lot of guys, they don't want necessarily to use a booster to create more saturation. They want to create volume, and that's where that momentary switch would be really cool again. But so I've got it set up so that now what we're doing is just raising the level of the Amp. Now another thing to keep in mind is, we're hitting this amp because of the amount of headroom, or I should say gain here. About right there is already pushing the input of the amp into overdrive. It's making those tubes work harder. And the reason I'm telling you that is to keep that in mind, because as I keep bumping the Amp up, eventually we're going to start overdriving the amplifier. So I guess that's more of an educational moment. But hopefully you guys understand what I mean. So here's the Amp into the Boomster. Let's check out how that sounds. So I've got the Amp dialed kind of just nondescript, not pushing a bunch of volume out of it either. We'll see what happens over on this side, okay? And I've got the switch in the full range or neutral position. playing terrible. But you guys get the idea, right? So that is definitely louder. I would say it is creating a little bit more saturation just because we're hitting the amp pretty good. But that's the idea. This pedal feels good, at least to me. I wish I could have all you guys in here and you could just plug in and check it out. But it does feel pretty good. There's certain boost pedals that I'm not as into on the back side of other pedals because it kind of changes the feel of the pedal. It can kind of make it sound or feel a bit stiff. I'm not finding that with this. Another cool thing is, you know, once again, circling back around to this control here, if I want to, you know, when I boost this, if I want to have it, you know, maybe with a little more mids, I can go that route. Or the other way, if I feel like there's too much top end, then I can throw the switch the other way. And then obviously if we crank it, like dimed, that sounds great. Maybe I'll turn the fat or the mids back on. That sounds great, but now we're clobbering the amp as well. So we've got clipping into clean, boosting into the amp. So that wasn't even close. That's a cool tone though. So that's a really great way to run it. Like I said, not to be redundant, but I tend to be redundant, is it does sound great the other way. If I wanted this to sound more saturated, that's what happened on the second two solos in that song. So maybe check that out. But I felt it was more important to let you guys hear it because in my opinion, I think that's where boost pedals can become a little bit problematic is when you're running them after your overdrives and things are just changing drastically in the feel. So it was important to me that you guys hear that pedal that way. So that is the Jam Booster Mark.2. If you've got any other questions, definitely go to their website. I've found their website to be really helpful. And in general, they put up videos on the YouTube thingy that are really cool and in-depth and concise. So definitely, if you have any other questions about this thing, yeah, go to the website and check it out. And as always, I really appreciate you guys tuning into the channel. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying what you see. And yeah, we'll see you next time.